All right. Again, thank you very much for being here. My name is Christine Caslow, and I am the chair of SELPA 1 CAC, which covers Mountain View, Los Altos, and Palo Alto. I would also like to introduce Rika Yamamoto, who's here from the Palo Alto CAC, who is also sponsoring this event, along with Brian Gaddis from Patch Palo Alto. And let me really quick put up some uh, stuff in the chat. So this is the link to the Patch website. This is the link to the CAC website for Palo Alto, which has a lot of useful resources. And this is a link to the SELPA 1C website if you'd like to find out more about what we do. And lastly, if you want to find out any previous sessions that we've had on a variety of topics, I'm going to post our YouTube channel in the chat as well. So again, I just want to thank everyone for being here. And again, this session will be recorded, and I just want to introduce Brian Gaddis to start the talk about assistive technology and how incredibly valuable it can be. So take it away, Brian. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Christine. Thank you for having us. And I'm joined by Jen Dorwin, Assistive Technology Specialist, founding member of the Assistive Technology Patch Program in Palo Alto Unified School District, and Jenna Warren, AAC Specialist with Palo Alto Unified School District. And the three of us will be sharing information on our assistive technology and AAC programs in Palo Alto Unified School District. So I'm going to share my screen here. We have some slides. The slides are linked in the chat. And Jen is going to start us off. You'll notice on this page here, we have a QR code for you to scan with your phones to see the slides, a link to our website, and also a link to the slides. All right, Jen, it's all yours.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We are always happy to have the opportunity to share what we do here in Palo Alto. Like Brian said, we'll give it one more minute. So anybody who wants to scan the QR code for the presentation, there's also the link. And then we'll go ahead and move on to the first slide. All right, Brian, you want to move on to that first slide? Okay, so our objectives for today are one, to just give a little bit of background about how our program evolved. One of the things we discuss a lot in assistive technology is that things change all the time. So we are constantly evolving. And we find it helpful for people to understand how things have evolved and continue to evolve in our department. Yeah. Also to understand how the patch model supports kids and IEP teams in Palo Alto. There'll be time to answer some questions, and then depending on how our time permits, we may be able to have some time to go over some of the tools that we use regularly in the district. So our team started back in around 2006. I worked in the district actually as a teacher of the visually impaired, and I also had a certification in assistive technology, and Palo Alto decided to move forward with trying to form a more comprehensive program around assistive technology. At the time, it was just me, and I split my time between the vision impairment and assistive technology, and handled all the AT and AAC duties. It was at that time primarily AAC. We didn't do a ton around AT specific support. It was more supporting the speech therapists and the students with AAC. About 3 years later, Brian joined the team, and which allowed us to then expand our program a little bit. Because we had a little more time. I actually only worked part-time. So we then at that point had myself at part-time and Brian at full-time. 2010-ish, the iPad was released, and that changed everything. It really changed how we provided support, what we could provide, the cost at which we could provide support. And so we got much busier at that point. In 2014, Brian and I attended a conference called ATIA, and did a pre-conference workshop called Capacity Building, because up until that point, we had been doing a lot of putting out of fires. We had just been kind of trying to you know, do what was asked of us, but we weren't able to set up any kind of foundational support for assistive technology in AAC. And at that point, we put together a 3 to 5 year plan working around building the capacity of our classrooms, versus just us coming in and putting out fires, because that wasn't what we felt like would support the students long term. At that point, we created what we still use, which is called a request for collaboration process. I'll talk a little bit about more what that looks like, but that is our referral process essentially. And around that time, we also added a team member, and the district added a AAC specific support speech therapist. That was not Jenna. Jenna joined us this year, and we are very lucky to have her. We have had a few people along the way, but Jenna has been an incredible addition to our team this year. Okay, next slide. And the other thing then, in 2019, we also added a full-time computer support specialist. So he is not here today, Mario. He is home with very sick babies, but he is also a member of our team and does our back-end support for troubleshooting, app support, those types of things in the background. The other thing that happened around this time was the pandemic, which for most people was, you know, not a good thing. And we try and look and see what good came out of it. And for us, some of the silver linings were our district chose to go to Chromebooks at that time, which from an assistive technology point of view is actually a really a benefit, in that it makes supporting students much easier and how they access things much easier. We started having access to virtual learning and these kinds of virtual meetings, which also increased our capacity to get word out and talk to more people and educate more people. The district also chose to go district-wide with several tools at that time. We will talk about what those tools are as we go, but this has been this is something that Brian and I have pushed for many, many years. The ability for all students to have access to some of these tools, because when all students have access, we tend to have our students who actually need them be more willing to use them. And it's what is called universal design for learning. It means everybody can benefit from the same tools, maybe just in different ways. And the district has embraced this in the last few years and added some great tools that we are currently using quite a bit. And just the overall comfort with technology. Everybody had to jump in and get comfortable real quick. And for us, that has been a huge benefit. The other thing we have seen in the last several years is the just realizing the gains of the capacity building we've done for the last 7 to 10 years. Our classrooms, you know, we do a lot more of background support rather than having to teach teachers about what is available. They often now know what is available and will come to us and know what their students need, so that it's a much quicker process. Next slide. So what we do now, first, we support IEP teams in AT decision making and the consideration process. This is what we call our RFC process. So this is when an individual student when a team feels that an individual student needs some technology to support their learning. And we have a Google form that the teacher or case manager fills out. It comes in several forms. One, it could be the teacher has no idea what they need. They just know they probably need something. Or they know generally what they need, or they know exactly what they need, but just need access to the program. And so depending on what that looks like, we might have a meeting with the whole team and where we discuss what the student, what their needs are, what their strengths are, what possible technology is out there to help support them. The nice thing and the thing we really push with this process is it's quick. Generally, if we get an RFC, we can be out in the classrooms within a week, or with the team within a week. And as soon as the decision is made about what type of technology they need, we can be in that classroom, generally, again, within a week or even sometimes a few days. We then, once that is determined, we then support that implementation. So we are an embedded service within special ed, which means if the tool is on the student's IEP, the team has access to us whenever they need us. We support that implementation. We will train the student, we will train the teacher, we will train the families, and we will train as many times as we need to. Our main goal is that the student and the team have access and understand and are able to implement it. Another big thing we do is UDL class training. So some of the tools Brian will talk about after this, we will go out into the gen ed classrooms and we will train entire classrooms of kids in the gen ed setting on a tool, knowing that there is a student in that classroom who might benefit from it, who has special ed services. But it is available and to all the students in the classroom, so everybody gets trained, and it becomes just an option for kids who just might learn in different ways, regardless of whether they have special education needs. So we do that. We do a lot of UDL trainings. The other thing we do is professional development. We do a lot of trainings for our teachers. We do trainings in PD days, where we will spend the whole day with teachers on a certain program or on teaching them about a variety of programs. We also will go to staff meetings, special education staff meetings, general staff meetings. We've done several, often at the middle schools, where we teach an entire school of teachers about a program. And then in addition to that, I guess it's been 2 years now, we implemented what we call the one-to-one Futures iPad project. So for our Futures classrooms, we were finding that there were a lot of tools that would support our students, but they were sharing, maybe one iPad in a classroom, or some classrooms might have 3 iPads, but others had none. And so we worked with our administration in order to implement a one-to-one program. So all students in our Futures classrooms have access to an iPad if they need it. And within, they are what we call Futures iPads. And so all of those iPads have access to the same programs that we have vetted and feel like would support the students. And we, with that project, we also take feedback from teachers. So if the teachers feel like they need, have something they really like, we'll look into it and see if it's a application we'd like to add. We also were involved in a curriculum pilot last year. We ran the pilot for the Futures curriculum. We are not curriculum specialists, but we helped support that for the implementation of the Teach Town curriculum. And then we support the AAC program in the background as needed when Jenna has background needs around tech specific or training specific for staff. And that's where we are now. So Brian will go ahead and discuss some of the programs we use.
All right, thank you, Jen. So this is a list here of the most commonly used tools that we use in Palo Alto Unified School District. There are many more tools that sometimes, through that referral process that Jen outlined, will determine that the tools from this list do not necessarily fit, and we will apply those tools as needed. But these tools are the ones that we are using most often. So this is just a list. I'm going to jump into each tool and give you just a quick overview of what that tool does with one slide per tool. So here we go. So the first tool, Learning Ally, and if you have access to the slides, you'll notice that the title, Learning Ally, is hyperlinked. And if you click that link, that will take you to a page with more information on the tool. Okay, so Learning Ally is an audiobook service that is available to any PAUSD student on any device. It has text on the screen. As you'll notice below, there's a screenshot of Learning Ally, and this has text on the screen, highlights the current sentence that is being read out loud, and it has human narration. And that human narration is really key. Most of the students we work with prefer that human narration over the synthesized text-to-speech. Learning Ally also has many accessibility features, such as increasing the text size, increasing letter spacing, line spacing, lots of tools that can help a reader with dyslexia, for example. So that's Learning Ally. And Learning Ally is one of those tools that, as Jen mentioned a couple years ago, the district purchased a district-wide license. Previously, Jen and I would manage the Learning Ally accounts, and we had just a handful of those accounts that we would have to assign to students as needed when that need came up through the referral process. So when the district purchased this district-wide, we were then able to go out and train an entire classroom on how to use Learning Ally. And maybe there were one or two students who were identified in that classroom who really needed audiobooks as an IEP accommodation. And so when you're able to train the entire class on this tool, those students who really need this tool, that stigma is really reduced of using something that might look different to their peers. So that was a huge, huge step for us. And Learning Ally is one of those tools where we've really seen that benefit. The next set of tools also falls under that umbrella of district-wide license purchase. And this was purchased at the same time as Learning Ally. So this one's a little confusing because there's a number of tools: Text Help and the Don Johnston Suite. Text Help recently acquired the Don Johnston Company, but that just happened about a year ago. So a lot of these tools, they're still working out, kind of figuring out what it's going to look like in the future. So currently we're kind of using all of the tools, but we're hoping that in the near future, the tools will be consolidated into one. But essentially what these tools do, and again, there's a screenshot down at the bottom of the slide, and this screenshot is of Read and Write for Google. And Read and Write for Google is this accessibility toolbar. You'll notice this toolbar at the top of the screenshot. And so there's a lot of different icons. This tool does a lot of different things. It has a lot of literacy supports, note-taking supports, and some of the tools, for example, are word prediction, a visual picture dictionary for defining new vocabulary, text-to-speech, having any web article read out loud, having new vocabulary words read out loud, and even having your own writing read out loud, we found has been a really helpful support. So when you're typing your essay in a Google Doc, you can have it read back to you out loud, which can be really helpful. It also has dictation, which is really, really commonly used accommodation. Word prediction, again, a really helpful tool for someone who might have dyslexia and other needs. And then some note-taking supports such as highlighting text from a web article, extracting those highlights into a Google Doc. That can really help with note-taking, building an outline, and ultimately writing your essay. There's also other accessibility features like visual clutter reduction. That's one of the most popular ones. You know, all the stuff we're reading online has so many pop-ups and ads and videos. There's a lot of tools that can help with that, really strip down that visual experience and make it more accessible. And like I mentioned, these tools are available to all students. So we made a huge push over the last few years to really get out to as many classrooms as possible to train teachers and students on how to use these tools to really, really make it second nature so that teachers are prompting their students to use these tools anytime they're doing something on their computers. Students making it second nature for them. And we've really seen those benefits. We will walk into a classroom now to deliver one of these trainings, and many of the students, before we even get started, will say, "Oh, I know those tools. I'm using those all the time." And that's just music to our ears to hear that and see the success of those tools. And again, it really reduces that stigma, and it helps kind of build culture and community within these classrooms where students start helping each other with these tools. They can troubleshoot the tools. Most of our students are very tech savvy, and they can help each other navigate the tools and troubleshoot. So just really great thing to see, fitting into that UDL framework that Jen has mentioned. Okay, another tool. This one is, we're kind of out of that district-wide license purchase now. So Bookshare is a tool that we use on an as-needed basis. It's similar to Learning Ally. It's a digital book provider. This one, Bookshare, does require that the student qualifies with what they call a print disability. And there's more details on what that means on their website. But essentially, these are free digital books that have text to speech. They do not have that human narration. So that's one of the big differences between Bookshare and Learning Ally. Another big difference is that Bookshare has a much larger library than Learning Ally. And like Learning Ally, it's accessible on any device. All right, so now Clicker. This is a writing support. This is a really great tool that we use a lot. And this screenshot below demonstrates just one way that Clicker can be used. Clicker can be used really on any device, an iPad, Chromebook. We tend to use it mostly on iPads, more so in our classrooms where students have extensive needs. It gives that tactile experience. It's a very visual program, but you'll see it in this screenshot here. Someone has created what they call a clicker set. And essentially, it's kind of like your keyboard down at the bottom of the screen, where you can add text, images that might relate to the text. And then we have words over here. So the student is being asked to compose a sentence choosing from this palette of words. And you can also toggle between this clicker set and your normal QWERTY keyboard. So the student can do a combination of tapping these icons and then also typing with a keyboard, a traditional QWERTY keyboard. And so the level of support can vary with this tool. You can do very visual with pictures, but you could also use it, say, as more of a word bank. So if someone was writing about ancient Egypt, you could just have a bank of words that are specific to that content so that the student can be typing their essay. And then when they're looking for that, content specific vocabulary, they can flip over to that word bank. So this tool has a wide range of uses. Again, that's Clicker. And more writing. So this next tool is called Mindomo. And over the years, we've used a number of different digital graphic organizers, but this one is one of our favorites. And the basic use of a digital graphic organizer, it allows the students to get their ideas out onto paper, the digital paper, in a fun visual way where they're not having to, type a bunch. They can use images, they can do color coding, they can organize things visually, based on their preference. And then where it becomes really powerful is that once you've organized all those ideas visually in this outline, you can then transfer that outline to a word processor, such as Google Docs, which is what we use in our district. You can transfer that outline or that visual diagram, and it converts into an outline. So in Google Docs, you'll then have a bullet point outline where you can then continue to write your paper, essay, writing assignment. So it really eliminates the need to have to copy that text from maybe an outline that you're writing by hand on paper, copying that text into your digital word processor. So it can save a lot of time and pain when it comes to that. All right, the next item. So built-in accessibility features. This has been great to see just in general over the years. I've been working in this role for 15 years now. And when I first started, a lot of the accessibility tools, such as dictation, for example, you needed to buy separate software. You'd buy the Dragon Dictation CD-ROM, and you'd have to install the software. You'd have to train the software. It was an expensive, laborious process. Whereas fast forward 15 years later to now, a lot of those tools that you would have to buy separately are now embedded, built in to the operating systems of our devices that we're carrying around. And oftentimes it's just as simple as going into the settings and turning those features on. So I love this. And I use these even for myself. It's a great place to start when you're exploring accessibility features because you don't have to buy anything. It doesn't require a whole lot of training. It's easy to explore and find out if some of these tools are helpful. And then maybe, again, for example, text to speech, if you start exploring the built-in accessibility text to speech and you find that it's helpful, then you can start exploring some of those fancier text to speech products if you're looking into purchasing something.
Okay,
So
Brian, we have a couple questions from the chat.
Sure.
One is, which age group of children is this applicable for?
Sure. And which tool specifically? Is there a tool specific, or is it
the one you were just speaking about, the last one before this slide?
the MindDomo?
Yes.
So that kind of depends. If we were, say, looking at it depends on the age, the assignments that the student is being asked to complete, and then also the need of the student. So it's a very versatile program in the sense that you can use it at a elementary age. You can also use it at a high school age. It's just going to look different the way that you implement the tool.
All right. And the other question is MindDomo available to all students? Which students are trained to be able to use this?
Yes, so it is not available to all students currently. We use it as needed based on that referral process. So if we have, a case manager who reaches out to us, we meet with that team based on the student need. We all determine as a team that MindDomo would be a good fit. Then we will work with that team, train the team on how to use the tool. That training can look different. Sometimes it's just an individual one-on-one or small group training with the case manager and the student. Might also be class training. It just really depends on the need and the environment.
Thanks, Brian.
Cool. All right, so back to the built-in accessibility features. This is just a list of some of the most commonly used ones: text-to-speech, dictation, sticky and slow keys, which is a physical access feature, switch control, those big jelly bean switches, you may have seen them. You can use those now with your computer. Voice control, you can essentially control your computer or phone with just your voice. Very cool. VoiceOver, which is for visually impaired users. Enlarged cursor. I don't know if you guys can see my cursor, but I use an enlarged cursor. I have the red outline with a large cursor. and then pointer control. So those are some of the popular ones. There are even more accessibility features. And I recommend you guys, whatever device you're using, go to the settings, find the accessibility features, and play around, see what they have to offer. Okay, and the last thing I wanted to mention are just some of the supplementary subscriptions that Palo Alto Unified Special Education Department uses. Jen can speak to these more if there's specific questions. She handles the subscriptions, but we use these kind of as a bridge to fill some of the gaps that might exist. So Palo Alto Unified has a lot of digital subscriptions, online curriculums, but special ed is unique. We have unique needs within our department. And so Jen is constantly looking for other tools that might help fill those unique needs. And this is a list of some of the most commonly used subscriptions that we are using right now. And they address a variety of needs, whether it's visual supports like Boardmaker, where we're printing out icons and making visual schedules with laminated Velcro icons, math support, lots of different things here.
All right, thanks, Brian. We have 2 more questions in the chat. How about the clicker writing support? Is that for all or also case dependent?
That one is also case dependent.
All right. And then the last question is, can you also describe what assistive tech is available for standardized testing like CASP, SAT, ACT, etc., and how students access these accommodations?
Yes. And so that one's tricky. That one's challenging, but there are some. So for CASP testing, there are what they call embedded accommodations. And our school district is really lucky because we have someone at the district level who is in charge of all the testing. And she is very knowledgeable on all of the accommodations, and she usually helps guide us through that process. But there are a lot of the most commonly used accommodations are available on CASP, such as text-to-speech, dictation. When you start to use more of the lower incidence accommodations, assistive technology accommodations, then it does get a little tricky. I will say one of the things that we've learned, the best practice is to make sure that the IEP documents what accommodations the student needs to access their education, and having that documented on the IEP will help to make sure that it's available on the CASP testing. Because if it's not on the IEP, then you're scrambling last minute right before the CASP, and it makes it very hard to sometimes enable those accommodations. So my recommendation would be to reach out to find out who might be your testing accommodations testing coordinator for those standardized tests, and they can hopefully help guide you through that. I know it's going to look different from district to district. For ACT, SAT, I've had a little experience with that, and the school counselors are a great point person for that because they are really in touch, involved with those tests and all of the updates. It's somewhat similar to the CASP testing in my experience. Just last year, we worked with Pali High School, and we worked with a group of students, and this was the first time they had rolled this out, but they had a similar setup where when the student is doing the pre-SAT, they walk through the accommodations. The counselor does have to make sure that those accommodations are enabled for the specific students. But once the counselor makes sure that those accommodations are enabled, it's pretty straightforward for the student. When the student signs into that SAT portal, they're going to be prompted, and they have a little instructional couple windows that pop up that show them how to use those accommodations that the counselor has enabled.
Excellent. We've just had a flood, so a few more questions. Hold on. Let's see. We've got, how can we ask to install the supplementary subscriptions?
So in our school district, we have this page here that's linked, And that's where the case manager, because these are special education only limited licenses funded by special education, this is where the case manager would go. And this link will take them to a Google form where they can choose which subscriptions they want.
Excellent. So let's see, when can we talk about, okay, sorry, when we talk about some tools meant to be UDL, does this mean that our general ed teachers and general aides have been trained in this?
Yeah, that's the hope. That's the goal. So using like Learning Ally and Read and Write for Google, for example, we had a big push when those tools were purchased. They were purchased at the district level. So many, people were involved in that decision. There were admins involved. And then we also had at that time literacy TOSAs at all of the secondary sites, so middle school, high school. And those literacy TOSAs were instrumental in implementing these tools. We collaborated, our department collaborated with the literacy TOSAs, with the admins to make sure that we were implementing these tools, training everyone that was, going to be coming across these tools and everyone who could use these tools. So yes, that is absolutely the goal, to make sure that the gen ed teachers, the aides, really anyone who comes across these tools knows how to use them.
All right, great. We had a comment. Be sure to request from your high school to apply for the SAT, ACT accommodations early. It is not automatic. And then so far, the last question. How do we find out as a parent, or what's the process to determine which tools are best for our student to have it on the IEP? I missed the part in the beginning where you explained about this. So is this in the slides earlier?
It is in the slides, and it's part of what Jen mentioned, our request for collaboration. So in our school district, that's what we use. And it's a Google form where the case manager goes in, fills out the form. It's got some basic questions, and it might be the case manager is familiar with all of the tools and knows exactly what their student needs. Maybe they just need us to sign them up for a tool. Or it might be the teacher has no idea what tools are out there. They know that their student has a need. They want to discuss with us, collaborate with us to help find out which tools are most appropriate. And that could mean us meeting with the teacher, us meeting with the parents, exploring different tools, talking about the student, and then ultimately, collaboratively deciding on a tool that makes the most sense. And then adding it, we can help the case manager add it to the IEP. Oftentimes the case manager knows how to add it to the IEP, but yeah, it can look slightly different. But that in our school district, it's part of that AT referral process.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, so just a quick shout out again, in our district, this is kind of what's made our program possible. Palo Alto is unique. We have a lot of resources. We're lucky even to have an assistive technology team. Not every school district has that, so we're really lucky to have that. And PI grants are a big part of it. We have a lot of grants in Palo Alto that help us, beef up our lending library. In our office, we have these huge baker's racks filled with various assistive technologies that we can check out to different IEP teams to trial different technologies to see if it's a good fit before it's added to an IEP. So that grant money really helps with that. We have a cohesive team, like Jen mentioned. Jen's been here for 20 plus years. I've been here for 15 years. Hopefully Jenna will be here for 15 years too. This is her first year, as Jen mentioned. But yeah, we've had a great team. The administrative support at the district level and within the special education department has been huge. And then that collaborative spirit. We work with IEP teams throughout the school district, grades preschool to post-senior, age 22. And that collaborative spirit is just very, very important. It's not a magic wand thing where we come in and say, this is the magic technology that's going to solve all the problems. It's really about meeting with all members of the IEP team and figuring out what's best for the student. So yes, and I think that's all I have. And I can turn it over to Jenna, our new AAC specialist.
All right, thank you, Brian. Hi there, everybody. I'm Jenna Warren. I am the AAC specialist for Palo Alto Unified. And I guess I'll jump in with what is AAC. I know a lot of families here probably don't have students who use AAC. AAC is a type of assistive technology. It can be. And it stands for alternative and augmentative communication. So any mode of communication that we are using besides speech, besides spoken words, that we're using instead of spoken words or in addition to help our message be clearer, or to just aid in providing more information to the person that we're communicating with. So some of those things we call unaided AAC, which is the things that we already do with our bodies anyway. So I'm moving my hands and I'm gesturing while I speak. I don't know if that helps you guys as much as it helps me to get my message across, but very often, we'll point, we'll make facial expressions that kind of help the listener know how we're feeling about something that we're sharing with them. So all of those are unaided AAC. We already do them. They're already available to us. And then there's aided AAC, which might be using a pen and paper to write down something when maybe we've lost our voice, right? Drawing a picture of something to help when we're trying to explain something, but we can tell that our listeners kind of like, I don't know what you're talking about. We might draw it out, right? Some of our students use pictures, and they might point to pictures or even take a picture and hand it to their teacher or to a friend to communicate. We use emails. There's all sorts of things that we do and that are available to us as aided communication. And the aided communication is what usually falls under assistive technology. So like I said, we all use it every day. These are some of the things that you guys are probably very familiar with yourselves using every day to help you. Sometimes we're going to order food online because we just don't want to go and talk to the person at the restaurant. We just don't have it in us. And so we order that food online, sometimes when we're on the phone and our kid is trying to talk to us and get our attention, instead of using our voice and interrupting our phone call, we might just put up a finger or put up our hand and let our kid know, hey, we got to wait for a little bit. So AAC is, I think a lot of people think of it in a very specific way, but actually we're all multimodal communicators. We're all using all different types of AAC all the time. And that's the same with our students too. So here in Palo Alto, we are very fortunate that we have some really great AAC supports in all of our futures classrooms, kind of for following that universal design for learning that we are really trying to carry over into so many aspects of what we're providing to our students. So we have single message switches and also multi-message switches. I should have put it on there as well. So those are just switches you record with your voice. When you touch the switch, it'll speak out a specific message. There's not a lot of variety and range into what one switch will hold. Usually it's up to about 3 messages tops. But those are great for very specific, let's see, targeting participation in specific activities in the classroom. Some of our students are also using where it says Go Talk 9. We have a Go Talk 9 in every class. And there's more variety on there. So that kind of gives them the opportunity to mix and match words that they might say. We get some early language supports going on with that. They have, they can be activity specific, but they can also be using core vocabulary, which is vocabulary that we use throughout our day in many different activities, and getting some of those good early language supports going on with those tools. We also have some core vocabulary boards, which are paper-based. They're laminated. They tend to have quite a bit of vocabulary on them, 66 words around there. So we can start building lots of different types of sentences. Those do not have voice output. So those boards are used usually by the classrooms or they're taught by the classroom staff, doing lots of modeling and using their own voices while they're saying those words and pointing to the pictures to support the students and learning what those pictures mean. Because unlike the Go Talk, when they touch the picture themselves, it won't voice output for them. And then all of our classroom staff for our futures classrooms there is a modeling iPad dedicated specifically for communication apps to be modeled to the students. So those are our high-tech communication apps. They use synthetic speech, and they have thousands of words available to the students. So if a student already has one of those devices written into their IEP, our staff will have an iPad with that app in the classroom as well to be able to model the student's language system with them and make sure that they're receiving that language instruction using their own language system. Our SLPs also have access to those modeling iPads as well. So those are some of our kind of universal design for learning supports that are in our classrooms. For the students that we do feel are needing some extra support, in addition to that language support, we do have a referral process for a high-tech AAC device or maybe a robust communication book. Not all of our students will be using high-tech options. It is based on a referral from the IEP team. They'll reach out to me and kind of get that whole process going. I'll then meet the student. Usually I'm already kind of familiar with the student anyway, because I'm talking a lot with all of our SLPs and working pretty closely with our futures classrooms. But I'll go and hang out with the student. We do a feature matching approach to determining which supports might be worth trialing with a particular student. Feature matching looks at how a student might access their communication support. So are they going to be a student that needs to use their eye gaze to access? Do they have motor control to kind of isolate a finger and directly touch a touch screen speech generating device? Will they need to use a switch that will scan vocabulary within the device, and then they would activate the switch in order to select something and have that voice output activated for them. So there's lots of different options out there that are designed to meet a variety of needs for our students, and we'll use a feature matching approach to determine which things might be best to trial with that student. And then they'll go through some trial periods once we've kind of narrowed down exactly what it is that they're needing. During a trial period, a student will use the technology at school, but it will not yet go home with them. But once we kind of settle on what we think is the best fit for that student, and we see that is really supporting them in the classroom, then we'll have an IEP meeting. If the team all agrees and the parent agrees, that's when we get that written into the IEP, and then it can go home with the student as well. So they have access to that. I mean, just across the board, they can take it to birthday parties, and they can take it to gymnastics class, and they can, wherever they're going to be communicating, we want them to be supported in that, because those communication skills are so important for their education, and they're learning all the time. So they need to have access to it everywhere. And then ongoing AAC support is a consultation service at PAUSD. That's our model. So a specific bank of minutes will be put into the IEP that allow me to be able to consult with the IEP team.
All right, we got a couple questions real fast. I just want to make sure we get to them because the chat's going by real fast.
Yeah.
So one is, and I think you may have just covered this, can we access these tools from home as well if you have them?
Yeah. So if it's written into the IEP, it will go between home and school. So usually it'll go home with the kid and in their backpack at the end of the day. Parents will have a charger. We do ask that it is charged at night and then comes home fully charged so that the student can use it at school the next day.
Excellent. And then another question, and this to some extent has been answered a little bit in the chat. I encourage everyone to take a look at the chat while this is going on. What do you do if the student is resistant to using or utilizing the tool that's been recommended? Someone said that you should try using it yourself, basically, like normalize it in the household for use, and that may improve, but what are your suggestions for resistance?
Yeah, 100%. So resistance usually comes from kids feeling like it's a lot, right? It's overwhelming. And a lot of people, when they first look at these devices, they're like, I have no idea where to find anything. It can be a lot, even for adults, and so very often, if we're jumping right in there and kind of expecting a student to be using it right away, we can kind of see some of that pushback of like, I don't want anything to do with that. I don't want anything at all, because I don't feel successful and I don't know what to do. So exactly as somebody mentioned in the chat, using it yourself, using it while you talk to other people in the house, just kind of narrating your day with it, and really getting familiar and comfortable with it for yourself, and not putting any demands on your child at first, and letting them see like, we can take time to do this, and letting them see you fail when you can't find a word, and working through it, so it normalizes that learning process and really makes it not scary.
Excellent, thank you. And again, just want to emphasize to everyone, there's a lot of good resources and stuff going on in the chat. So please, everyone, take a brief moment to check it out, if possible. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So just a little bit about consultation services and what it looks like. Pretty similar to what Jen was describing with the assistive technology services. I will go and do some device training with a lot of device training with classroom staff and any of the specialists that are on the students' team. So the SLPs, OT, PT, just anybody that will be working with the student, and hopefully they'll be able to support the use of that device during their sessions as well, because communication happens everywhere. So, so I'll do some device training, which is device specific based on the app and the hardware that the app is on, as well as just kind of developing their awareness and their use of AAC implementation strategies. So that's a lot of what we do. Also consultation or collaboration during IEP writing, for recommendations for accommodations around AAC and communication, as well as goal writing. I do a lot of that. Let's see, low-tech communication supports. So they take a long time to create, and that's definitely something that I can support with. It's hard to get those low-tech supports, and low-tech supports are using Boardmaker, which is one of the assistive technology apps that was highlighted earlier. It's a symbol. It's a program that allows us to make a variety of materials using symbols. And many of our students use an AAC device that uses the same symbol set as Boardmaker. So I'll make a lot of classroom supports that use those same symbols, and backup communication vocabularies. So if a device breaks, or for some reason, maybe they're doing like swimming. Some of our middle schoolers do swimming and they can't take their high-tech AAC devices with them into the pool. So we can have laminated low-tech backups for communication that they can have by the pool, and that could get wet. Preschool is another setting where a lot of that is really helpful, because they do a lot of stuff with sticky wet things. And then during triennial evaluations, we don't reassess for like a whole new language system unless we're really feeling like we didn't hit the mark with our first recommendation. If a student has been chugging along for a while and we just see, there's other things out there that might support them better, then we'll do a whole nother kind of evaluation of what they need and talk about changing their language system. But as much as possible, we want to keep it consistent, because it'd be like learning a whole new, now I don't get to speak English at school anymore. Now I have to speak Spanish, right? It really throws kids for a loop when you change their communication systems. So we don't reevaluate in that capacity at a triennial evaluation often, but we will always be looking at, how's it going? What's going on in the environment? is there anything else that we can be doing differently or adding that could support the student in another way, and just looking at how things are going. So that's kind of what triennials look like for AAC. And continuing on with universal design for learning and trying to build that capacity in our classrooms. These are some of the things that I've started implementing this year, and I hope to be able to kind of get them in all of the classrooms and at all of our school sites by the end of the year, fingers crossed, in addition to all the other things going on. But playground core vocabulary boards at all the school sites. I know a lot of people think about playground core vocabulary boards as kind of large wooden structures that sit, you know, a distance from the actual play structure. That's not the direction I'm hoping to go in. I'm actually hoping to get smaller, laminated, flexible boards right on the playground structures so that students who do use our symbol supported communication boards don't need to stop what they're doing with their peer, leave the playground in order to walk over and say something. I mean, that totally breaks up the whole communication opportunity. So I'm really hoping to get some supports right there on the play structures where kids will be able to use them in really natural contexts. Also, robust communication books inside the classrooms. So right now we have core boards inside the classrooms, and it's just kind of one page of 60 to 66 symbols. But I'd really love to get some good communication books in the classrooms to be able to be used as kind of a universal design for learning support. And then large core vocabulary boards as well for modeling. So again, right now we have the small core boards where just kind of one student and maybe an aide would be looking at it at a time, but I would really love to get some supports in there for whole class teaching opportunities to be able to embed some of those symbol supports as well. And I think that's the last slide that I had.
Jenna, there was a question about the playground core boards. If you could just kind of explain them more, what they are.
Yeah. So core boards are what you're seeing on the screen right now. These are actually the exact core boards that I'm putting on the playgrounds. So they just have a variety of words for students to be able to communicate with each other. Core vocabulary is words that we use across settings. So it's not context specific. It's not words that we would like only use while eating or only use during art. Core vocabulary are words that we're using all the time throughout our day. So they're really great bang for our buck when we're teaching vocabulary to kids. It's great to focus on that core vocabulary. It allows them to communicate for a variety of reasons and functions. And many of our students who are using AAC can't bring their AAC devices with them onto the playground because it's hard to hold it while you're trying to climb or, walking up the stairs. If you're having to look at where you're going to be safe on the playground, it's hard to look at your communication device and kind of navigate and be able to find the word that you want. So it really reduces the opportunities that our kids have during a time where it's supposed to be playful and social and they're building all of those social skills. They don't have a way to communicate very easily to do that. So really getting them the support that they need while they're on the playground and have access to, some good vocabulary to be communicating with their peers is really, really important. Any other questions for us? AAC or AT?
There was a question that I want to make sure I address that came in through the initial Google Form survey that came out. Someone had asked about their student who was reading. I think they said they were reading they're a third grade student reading at a second grade level. They like to read on their Kindle. What tools would you recommend? And so it can be a little tricky to recommend something just off of that little information, but it would my guess is it would be something like, you know, looking at the tools that Palo Alto offers, something like Learning Ally would be a good fit. That's an audiobook service, works similar to a Kindle, but an audiobook service that could be accessible on any device. Really, it could be, you know, an iPhone, an iPad, a Chromebook, really any device. So something like that. And then another tool that might fit as well that we utilize a lot, and I utilize this personally at home as well, as the public library system uses a tool called Libby, and that's where you can check out ebooks, audiobooks for free on any device as well. So the only limitation of that is that there is a limited number of titles, a limited number of copies. So sometimes you have to place a hold on one of those digital books. But that's a great service as well, the public library service. And yeah, I just wanted to make sure I addressed that question, but I think that's all we have unless there's other questions.
I don't see anything else in the chat. I'm going to thank you very much for this. I think it would be excellent. We do have one comment that came in. It would be good for the parent to describe the Kindle features the student is using with their teachers, highlighting audio dictionary, large custom font. Yeah, so that's excellent advice. If you're, you know, to work with your teacher, even if you don't have an IEP, even if you're just trying to figure out how to help your kid and you haven't yet qualified for an IEP, work with your teacher with the available AT that's available to everyone now, because we have Kindle and other devices. But teachers should be able to have you know, a basic understanding of these. Even hopefully they will get the extra training that you've discussed, but hopefully teachers are at least familiar with these basic things. And so yes, AT is available to students with 504s as well. All right, I am going to be stopping the recording. So if anyone has a personal question specific to their child, their student, let me know. And or now is the time to ask, raise your hand, or just, you know, say what you want. So I'm going to stop the recording now. And again, thank you so much, both to Jen and Brian. Absolutely fantastic. I learned a lot. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you.